All right, in this video, I'm going to look at how we change fractions into decimals, okay? Now, fractions into decimals is really nice and simple. There are a few different ways of doing it, but I'm going to show you the one that just always works, and it's a nice fail-safe. If you have a more efficient way of doing it, then that's absolutely fine. But this one, you'll be relying on your calculator a little bit, okay? So really, to change any fraction to a decimal, I'm just going to take the numerator, which is the top number in the fraction, and I'm going to divide by the denominator, which is the bottom number in the fraction, okay? And that's just it. It's top divided by bottom. And that's really all I'm doing to change a fraction into a decimal. So if I look at this fraction 1/2, okay, well that fraction 1/2 is saying numerator, right? That's the number up top, divided by, that's really the line in the fraction means divided by. Okay, so the divided by is the line in the fraction, and then the denominator is simply that number on the bottom of the fraction. Okay, so it's top divided by bottom, and that's what we're looking at doing. So in your calculator, you would type 1 divided by 2, and that's going to give you 0.5. Now you probably knew half was 0.5, so if you already know what it is, because some of them are very obvious, you can just leave it, change it to its decimal form very easily. Okay, so let's look at some that we might not know off the top of our heads. Okay, so this one here, I've got 6/25, or 6/25. So all I'm going to do to take that fraction and turn it into its decimal is I'm going to take the 6 and then divide by the 25. So the line in a fraction means divide. So I type in 6 and then divide by 25, and that's going to give me a 0.24 as a decimal, or 24 hundredths. Okay? If I wanted to change 7/50 into its decimal, I'm going to take the 7 and then divide by the 50, and that's going to give me 0.14, or 14 hundredths. Okay? So that fraction 7/50 is equal to 0.14. They are the exact same value. It's just a different way of writing the same number. Okay, so they are the same thing. It's just a different way of showing it. Okay, now what if I've got something like 7/10? Now this is where saying your fractions properly is very beneficial. Now I'm lazy and I say 7/10, and that's a bad habit. What I should really be saying is 7/10, because when I say 7/10, right, 7/10, it's actually telling me my decimal form, right? 7/10 would be 0.7, or 7/10. That one, the name actually tells me exactly what my decimal should look like. Now, if your fraction is something over top of a 10, then that number simply just slides into the tenths position. If you weren't sure, you'll still get it. If you go 7 divided by 10, you'll still get the same value. Okay, so this next one, 93 hundredths, right? 93/100. Well, hundredths is my second decimal place, so I could write this as 0.93. There's my 93 hundredths. But if you're not sure, again, taking 93 and dividing by 100, you will still get the same value. Okay, so yes, you can make it so that it's something over 10 or 100, but absolutely top divided by bottom, numerator divided by denominator will work just fine. Next one, I've got 9/125, so 9/125. Now that one doesn't work as nicely for telling me my decimal position. Okay, so I'm going to take the 9 and divide by the 125, numerator divided by denominator, and that gives me 0.072. Okay, so I've got 0.072, or another way of saying that is 72 thousandths, because now my 2 is in the thousandths position. Okay, 1/3. Well, 1/3, the way I would do this is 1 divided by 3. And when you do this, you're going to get 0.3333, and then you probably have 3's until your calculator runs out of digits to show you. Now, if you see something like that, it doesn't mean that those 3's just stop. Okay, if I was to do this long division, I hope you've been shown this before in your classes, but this means that number keeps going on forever and ever and ever. This is what we call a repeating decimal. It has a repeating pattern that's just never going to end. So what I do is, I don't want to keep writing 3's for the rest of my life. So I'm going to write that first 3, and then I put a line over top of it. And when I put a line over top of a number, it means that portion keeps repeating forever and ever. Okay, so I've got 0.3 repeating. I put that line on top of it. Okay, let's look at these. 3 over 11. Okay, so that would be 3 divided by 11. 3 divided by 11 ends up giving you 0.27272727, and depending on where your calculator runs out, it either ends on a 7 or it might end on a 3, and you might go, the pattern got broken. Well, no, the pattern didn't break, because let's say that my calculator can only show me digits up to here, and that's where it's going to stop. The calculator says, well, this is the last number I can show you, and this 27 would actually be closer to 30, so I'm going to round it up to a 3. Okay, so if it looks like your pattern breaks at the very last second, it's because the calculator is actually rounding for you. Okay, so don't assume the pattern breaks. If it looks good until the very last number, that pattern is still happening. So in this one, the 2 and the 7 happen for the first time, and then the 2 and the 7 keep repeating one after the other. That is the part that's repeating. So I would put my bar over top of the 2 and the 7 to say those numbers will keep repeating in order forever and ever and ever. Okay? Last one here, I've got 7 divided by 9. 7 divided by 9 is equal to 0.7. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, and 7's keep going and going and going. And again, your calculator might show you an 8 at the end. It doesn't mean an 8 suddenly appears. Your calculator just ran out of room and it rounded for you, thinking that's what you wanted. So I would write this as 0.7. It's a horrible 7. And then I would put my line over top to say that that 7 keeps repeating forever and ever. Okay, so that's changing fractions into decimals. It's really simply take your numerator and divide by the denominator. Watch out, because if you do have some repeating pattern, you probably want to simplify how you're writing it and not continue writing that repeating portion forever and ever. You've got better things to do in your day.